The only way to make a great adventure is to have combat. Lots and lots and lots and lots of combat. So much combat, in fact, that there is combat happening within combat. Wrong. Hello, GMs! Welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM. My name is Guy, and today we're talking about what makes a good adventure versus a bad adventure. Now, here's a little bit of a spoiler for you coming up. We're not going to go into the nitty-gritty, the minutiae of adventure design in today's episode. That's not what it's about. We are looking at it from a holistic perspective. Remember, we are on a journey. Now, if you are new to this particular series that we are running, it started several months ago in January 2022, and it starts with the video called Start Here. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And what it is an unpacking of the book that I have written called The Practical Guide to Becoming a Great GM. Now, that book is still available on pre-order. Links down below if you want to get yourself a copy of that PDF coming out at the end of April. Fingers crossed. And then the physical copy will ship out towards the end of September. Global shipping, printing, it's a thing. Nonetheless, we're working through that book. Now, you don't have to have the book in order to watch the videos and gain value from the videos, and you don't have to watch the video in order to understand the book. The book is pretty much self-explanatory. The whole idea behind the book is taking you on a journey where you start to hone your skills. You start to understand stuff that you were doing perhaps subconsciously, and which now you have started to actually realize what was going on. You start to realize what is actually happening. And as a result, you start to be able to improve upon stuff, making your GM experience that much better. At least that's the hope that we have in terms of putting this video series together. Now, before we go too much further, you can earn experience points by being aware of what's going on throughout the video. Check things, this side, check things happening here periodically, because you can earn experience points. Now, those experience points count towards yourself as you improve. Keep a track of experience points that you earn from each video. You can only earn those experience points once per video. So if you watch the video 10 times, you don't get 10 times experience points. You just get the experience points that you earn once what you have watched the video. Towards the end of the year, you will see that if you have accrued a certain amount of experience points, well, that means that you've paid attention to the videos, you've really put in the effort, and so you should be well on your way to becoming a great GM, or at least a GM who has fun whilst gaming, and who has players who keep coming back and wanting more and so on. This week's episode is sponsored by Dungeon Fog. Now, Dungeon Fog has been a sponsor of the channel for just forever, and I absolutely adore using them. I use them for everything that I do. I very seldom will do a map that's not made in Dungeon Fog. As a matter of fact, I can't remember the last time that I did that. I even have written a book about and made a book using Dungeon Fog. So Dungeon Fog is a big part of my life as a GM, and they should be a part of your life too. Now, you can use them for free, but you have a limited option there, or you can use the code GreatGM and get a discount when you sign up for a longer term subscription. Now, those subscriptions really worth it. They give all kinds of amazing things out every 3 months. There's new asset packs and stuff. They have over 10,000 props. That's insane. Anyway, Dungeon Fog, helping make good adventures better? No, not actually. As much as I'm sure they would hate me to say that. They help make good adventures even better, but they can't help make good adventures. And the reason for that is, well, that's the whole point of this video. So let's jump straight into it. So good adventures are adventures that have two components. And that's it. It's two basic components. And once, I'll say that twice. Once we have decided on and accepted those two parameters, we can then move forward to start to design good adventures later on. The very first parameter that a good adventure has, that it has to be there. The players make choices. I know. It's not as earth-shattering as I had hoped it would be, but that's because it's a fundamental. This is a building block. Remember, we are building ourselves up to becoming great GMs. We need to understand these basics first. So the players have to make choices. I know this sounds a little bit redundant. Surely isn't that why the players are there? The point of the matter is that the players have to make choices. That means they need to be aware of what choices they can make, They then need to be aware that those choices are their own, and they have to be free to make whatever choice they want to make, even if it's a stupid choice. And they will make stupid choices. Or at least they're going to make choices that they think are the best possible solution at the given time, which could sometimes mean that you as the GM have not given them enough options to be able to make what you would consider the smart choice. So do you see the ramifications of unpacking that simple little sentence? Players make choices. So we have to make sure that players know what kind of choices they have. This means that a good adventure, regardless of whether it has combat or politics or dialogue or NPCs or beautiful maps or amazing figurines or miniatures or portraits or whatever else you want to add to your game, if the adventure doesn't allow the players to make choices, it's not going to be a good adventure. It's effectively a novel. Or I suppose the best way you could put it would be a good old-fashioned choose-your-own-adventure series, like the old books, the Fabled Lands, for example. Brilliant series of choose-your-own-adventure books, but we're trying to run Dungeons & Dragons, or Call of Cthulhu, or D20 Modern, or 7th Sea. We are trying to run a role-playing game, which requires the players to have the power to choose to do things that you as the GM have not prescribed. Okay. That was weird. Nothing like having a power trip in the middle of recording a video. Anyway, let's carry on. So the players have to be able to make choices. Now, we've established that the GM is responsible for giving those players the opportunity to make the right choices. And I'm using inverted commas here because there is no such thing as a right choice. There is simply a choice, and then we go from there. Now, we know that over time, the players are going to be getting a lot of information, and sometimes that information comes in too fast, or they forget that it's come in. I frequently find players just generally not checking their notes, or at least not trying to build connections. So when they start to come to making decisions, those decisions are ill-informed simply because they haven't checked their notes. So something that I like to do is encourage my players between sessions. Hey folks, we're going to be playing in the next few weeks. I strongly advise that you check your notes, see what's happening, draw your plans. Now, some of them might go, yeah, but they're not necessarily connecting the dots. So we have to make sure that we are giving them those options. I'm not saying we have to spoon feed them all of the options and say, well, folks, you could go left down the path or right down the path. What you're doing is that you are automatically limiting their choices. You are automatically taking away their options of choice because now you are saying to them they can go left or right. Why can't they go up? Or why can't they go straight ahead? Why can't they turn around and go back the way that they went? So we can't prescribe choices for them to make. We simply have to give them the opportunity of making those choices themselves. Now, you could put a giant warning sign on a door saying, do not enter, danger, vacuum, and they open the door and get attacked by a Hoover anyway, but that's just the risk that they're going to run. They were empowered to make the choice, they had the information, and they made it anyway. And that leads me on to the second point of today's video, is the other component that makes a good adventure is that the choices that the PCs have been making have consequences. And the PCs have to see that. They have to experience the consequence. So, for example, if they decide that they are going to attack the king, and you've had your friendly courtier who said, I really would advise against attacking the king outright in front of all of his people, you really should wait until an opportune moment. You've now given the players options. You've given them the ability to make those choices. If they still decide to make the choice and attack the king, for example, you then have to have the guards come in and arrest the PCs, and then have the PCs stand trial for attempted regicide, for attempted assassination of the king. They have to face those consequences. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that you're going to kill the entire party by execution. You might invent a rebellious movement who are lurking in the shadows, who will see the PCs as becoming heroes of the realm because they're trying to get rid of this evil king. And so we'll spring them from prison just before they go off to their execution and have a whale of a time, and then you let the PCs continue making their choices and things. Far too often, I see GMs who are running their games and they go, oh, well, you know, the players made a bad choice to open the door with a vacuum, and I'm just taking the vacuum away because it would be too strong for them. That's not the right call. The right call is that they open the doors, there has been a warning sign, there has been a danger sign, and they face a giant encounter which nearly kills them, or which may kill off 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of them, but provided one of them stays alive to bring back the rest of them, that's okay. The consequences must be real, they must be tangible. Why? Because if the players are making bad choices, and again, inverted commas, if they're making bad choices and you are minimizing the effects of those bad choices, they kill the king and no one seems to respond whatsoever, they will run around killing everybody because there are 0 consequences for their actions. Now, how does this boil down into making a good adventure versus a bad adventure? Well, at the fundamental level, which is what we're talking about in this video, a good adventure is something that is driven by the player choices and has player consequence as a result, which results in the entire adventure coming together at the very end. It means the players were choosing and they were driving the story, they were creating the story as they were going along with your input, providing NPCs and the like, and they got to a satisfactory conclusion, and it was because of their choices and because of their actions. It wasn't because you as the GM had shepherded them or guided them or railroaded them to a conclusion. That means a bad adventure is an adventure where the players didn't really have a choice, they don't have choices, or their choices have no consequences, and whatever they do will result in a successful outcome. Think about any kind of RPG computer game that you may have ever played, or that you may have heard other people playing about, or which you've never heard about, which you are now hearing about. RPG games, computer games, and choose-your-own-adventure books, to a large degree, have to have a certain amount of lack of player choice. They have to focus the player's options and say, well, you can do this, this, or that. You can't just go crazy and do your own thing because they're driving a bigger narrative. Now, those do make engaging games, but we have an understanding that this is a computer game and we are trying to get to the end. With role-playing, that is not the objective. The objective is not to get to the end of the campaign. It is to experience and to create the story on our journey towards the end of the campaign, and that means we need to have player choice and player options. I hope this has made some kind of clarity for you. I hope that this has inspired you a little bit to realize that if you are not giving your players lots of options, or if you're not giving them consequences for their choices, you can see how it starts to make a bad adventure. Because, as I've said, I'm not going to say it again. You know what I was going to say. Player choice, player consequence, good adventure. And really that was the entire video, but I feel like I needed to explain it. Okay, live with it. Thank you so much for watching all the way through to the end. Massive thank you to Dungeon Fog, this week's sponsor. Again, use the code GREATGM to get a discount. And a huge thank you to all my patrons who are now experiencing NPCs of the month with plots of the month. I've designed an NPC system. It's very simple. Every month, my patrons get 12 NPCs randomly drawn from across a city environment. And those 12 NPCs come with 4 adventures. And each adventure randomly draws from the NPC deck that you will slowly create over time, and ultimately you're going to end up with like 300 or 400 NPCs with 40 adventures or something crazy along those lines. And you can just randomly pull out a little adventure. They're adventure hooks, and they say, right, draw one of these characters, one of these, one of these, and one of those, and suddenly you are combining them together to create an adventure on the fly if you need to fill in or pad out adventures in a city, or if you're just looking for some inspiration. Anyway, big thank you to those patrons who make these videos possible and keep everything going. Until next week, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming!